Hello, Henry and Bex here, and welcome to Xbox On. With the next generation of Xbox bringing a brand new controller to get our hands on, there's no better time to look back over the past 2 decades of Xbox gamepads and take a peek at what the Xbox Series X has to offer. We're going to take you through the evolution of Xbox controllers and tell you why they were each designed in such a specific way to enhance your gaming experience.
First up is Big Boy Season, with the controller that came bundled with the original Xbox way back in 2001, nicknamed the Duke. This pad was famous for its size and was even recognised as the world's largest controller by the Guinness Book of Records. Now that chunkiness wasn't the only interesting thing about the Duke though. It introduced the offset analog sticks that would become the Xbox norm, as well as those ABXY face buttons, although you might notice they're not arranged the same way as on a modern controller, with the idea being that you could reach them all without having to move your thumb. Plus, those buttons were analog, meaning they would respond to different amounts of pressure. And the same goes for the triggers, something that has stuck around in every Xbox controller since. The same can't be said for the black and white buttons, which were used on the OG Xbox and basically replaced by the shoulder bumpers. The Duke also had 2 big slots at the top for slotting in a headset or a memory card, each packing a whopping 8 megabytes of solid state memory. But its coolest feature has got to be the cable. It featured a breakaway design so that if something caught on the cord, it wouldn't try and pull the whole console with it. It's a tiny little design that must have saved thousands of Xboxes from meeting their doom on a living room floor. And if watching this has made you nostalgic, good news! You can buy a reimagined version of the Duke for your Xbox One in black or translucent green. And because all Xbox One accessories will be forward compatible, you can be gaming your way into the next gen on the Xbox Series X with the controller that started it all.
Not everyone was able to get their paws around the Duke though, and so a second controller codenamed Akabono was introduced. When the original Xbox came to Japan in 2002, this was the controller the console came bundled with, and it made its way to the US later that year, and Europe the next under the official name of the Xbox Controller S, kicking off a naming convention that would continue for many years after. The S was significantly smaller and lighter, weighing about 2/3 what its predecessor did, and the entire layout had to be reworked to accommodate this shrunk down design. Those black and white buttons moved to the bottom of the controller, as did the start and back buttons. The action buttons were shuffled around too, moving into a more familiar diamond formation. In fact, if you look at the S now, you can see the roots of basically every Xbox controller that followed.
When the Xbox 360 arrived in 2005, it brought with it one of the best controllers of all time. The 360 controller came in 2 varieties. There was a wired pad, which kept the breakaway cable design, but switched to a USB connection so you could plug it into your PC. But even more exciting was the wireless version, one of the first of its kind. When it comes to layout, the 360 basically took the best of the Xbox Controller S design and streamlined it. The black and white buttons were switched out for shoulder bumpers, but the face buttons, sticks and D-pad stayed pretty much the same. The result was a beautifully ergonomic pad that felt good in the hands even after your billionth Halo 3 match, and one that's still used by many esport pros on PC even today. The 360's biggest addition has got to be the guide button, a big circular button sat right in the middle of the controller. Where previous pads had featured the Xbox logo, this button lit up when turned on with a 4-part ring that showed which controller belonged to which player. It let you jump into the newly introduced guide menu to access everything from achievements to Xbox Live without having to leave your game. And most important of all, those of us who don't like leaving the sofa unnecessarily, it was able to turn on your console remotely. There was a small update to the design in 2010 with a wireless controller that came bundled with a play and charge kit for all your battery needs, ridged analog sticks and a very nifty adjustable D-pad that could switch between disc or plus shaped with a flick of the wrist. It's an idea that would surface again 5 years later, but we'll get to that.
So, how do you improve on a controller that everyone agrees is basically perfect? That was the challenge that the Xbox One team faced, and Microsoft spent over $100 million investigating ideas from touchpads to built-in speakers and displays, and even smell emitters that would put your nose in the game. And ultimately, they concluded, well, you don't mess with the classic. The Xbox One controller is a refinement, not a reinvention. Every single aspect, from thumbsticks to guide button, has been tweaked to perfection. Take, for example, the triggers, known as impulse triggers because they each feature their own motor, so you get haptic feedback when you're revving your engine or shooting a gun in-game. The D-pad moved back to the classic plus shape, the space between the action buttons was tightened just the teensiest bit. Even the screws on the bottom of the 360 controller were dropped on the basis that they can be a bit annoying after hours of gaming. That's the kind of attention to detail you're getting with an Xbox One controller. And here's a cool feature you might not have known about. The pad has a sensor at the very top that can detect whether it's being held, meaning that when you put the controller down for an extended period, it knows to go into low power state. The pad has had a couple of updates over the years. The 2015 edition added a 3.5mm headphone jack and more responsive bumpers, and the Xbox One S controller included Bluetooth support, making it even easier to connect to PC or, for the first time, mobile, all making a brilliant controller even better. And when it comes to looks, well, the Xbox One pad has got a more angular shape than the 360, with the battery pack built right into the body of the pad for a smoother, more streamlined look. But more important than that are all of the amazing special editions and variants that have been released over the years, with designs that range from simple color gradients to Minecraft-inspired looks and the majesty that is the Cyberpunk 2077 Xbox One controller. And you don't need to stop there. Thanks to Design Labs, you can customize the controller to your personal taste. There are more than 1 billion possible color combinations, and that's before you even get into the rubber grips, metallic accents, and personalized messages. This is your chance to own a controller that is truly unique.
But of course, the main Xbox One controller isn't the only one that exists. For true controller connoisseurs, there's also the Elite range. This is the very definition of a premium pad, taking that Xbox One design and making a high-end version that was designed based on watching the best players. The first Elite wireless controller is a treat for the eyes and the hands, with premium components all over. But even more importantly, it's just ridiculously customizable. It came with 2 different D-pads that attach magnetically, letting you switch between the plus shape and disc on the fly. Now, where did I hear that before? You can also switch between analog sticks, alter the resistance of triggers, and attach magnetic paddles to the underside of the controller that could be used as secondary face buttons. So you never need to take your thumbs off the sticks.
The Elite Series 2 took that customization to a whole new level with adjustable tension thumbsticks, an extra hair trigger setting, and a new section of interchangeable sticks and paddles based on how people used the first Elite. With the Xbox Accessories app, you can remap every single button, and Shift key functionality means you can give every single button a second function to fit your playstyle. And if you like to have different settings for each game, that's all handled with a dedicated button that lets you jump between 3 profiles on the fly. Throw in an internal battery with up to 40 hours of gaming life in it, a USB-C port, improved rubberized grips, and Bluetooth support, and you've got the undisputed best controller ever.
The Elite is one way that controllers have diversified during the Xbox One's lifetime. But probably even more important is the introduction of the adaptive controller, the world's first mass-produced controller purpose-built for accessibility and inclusivity. Designed to meet the needs of gamers with limited mobility, the adaptive controller features 2 large programmable buttons, a D-pad, and all the necessary menu buttons. But where it really comes alive is through the connection of peripherals to the many USB ports and 3.5 headphone jacks, one for each button, trigger, and stick on the regular controllers. Meaning the adaptive controller is just that, a platform that can be customized to fit pretty much any gamer's needs and abilities.
That brings us bang up to date, so there's only one way left to look: forward. The Xbox Series X controller is the logical evolution of everything you've seen in this video. It's an iteration on the Xbox One S controller, which also manages to work in some of the features from the Elite series. The body of the controller has been shrunk down just a little bit to make it more comfier and more accessible for all players, regardless of their hand size. The triggers and bumpers have a tactile dot pattern, and the D-pad is now a faceted dish with a deeper center for your thumb to rest in, designed to be a perfect middle ground between the plus shape and circular designs. And for those of us who like to capture those gaming moments, there's a brand new share button that makes it easy to grab a screenshot or record a video without any faffing with on-screen menus. Oh, and one final thing you should know, because Xbox Series X is completely back and forward compatible with Xbox One accessories, it can be used on your current console. So even if you're not ready to make the leap and buy a new console on day one, you can still be playing with a next-gen controller.
Now, I don't know about you, but I just cannot wait to get my hands on an Xbox Series X controller. And when we do, you can be sure there'll be a video sharing all our impressions right here on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed and you've clicked the notifications bell to stay on top of everything Xbox. In the meantime, shout out your favorite Xbox controller of all time down in the comments, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time. Bye!